I actually went to this like redwood retreat, I think I mentioned, and was journaling. And the mantra that I got back was, what I need to do is simple. Love our customers, love our employees, love our community. It's all about love. And if I do that every day, we're going to get somewhere. And then I need to build on culture, but I have no idea how to do it. And I realized I'm stuck. The company's stuck because I'm stuck. I've not been growing as a leader. I've been rooted in an old identity as a serial entrepreneur. And I need to embrace identity as a leader building an enduring company with a healthy culture. So I just went and found every mentor I could find, every book I could find, because I realized I need help. And I actually would say all great change starts with that realization.
Every week here on More Than Profit, we explore the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors who have made a difference in the world while building successful businesses. We sit down with each guest and dive into their personal journeys, their struggles and triumphs, and the lessons they've learned along the way. On this episode, we sit down with Andrew Laffoon, co-founder and CEO of Mixbook. Andrew began his career in 1997 as an independent web developer, creating websites and developing Flash demos, a custom content management system, and corporate websites. It was in 2006, after graduating from UC Berkeley, that he and a friend co-founded Mixbook, an online design tool for creating photo books, cards, calendars, and wall art. What has been interesting about his story is that after 17 years at the helm, he recognizes that what he is building is much more than a technology product to help people organize their photos, but a company that impacts people and community through storytelling and the power of human connection, that their number one purpose is to help people connect with the people they love. Listen in as we talk about everything from his early accolades and the plans for a typical Silicon Valley startup story to his epiphany around building a company based on culture.
Tell me about some of the awards you've won over the years, because I know you're well decorated. What are some of the awards you won?
Well, I don't want to boast, but when I was in high school, I was voted most conservative and most liberal. So,
which, if listeners don't know Bryce Butler, they're like, it is true about you. That's actually very true. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard about anyone.
Yeah, it was pretty weird, but those were the two I won.
Well, yeah, and
I'm also a Kentucky Colonel, as you like to point out.
Which, again, it's not a real title. I mean, that's what's so weird to me is, like, I know you didn't pay for it, but it seems like that's a title people pay for.
Well, it has a long history. You should look it up. It's pretty.
Well, no, I have looked it up. So,
what
again,
what awards have you won?
Again, I'm like you. I hate tooting my own horn, but yeah, I was best dressed, biggest flirt, and most likely to lose my virginity when. That was when I was pretty young. I went to a seminary where I won the leadership award. I mean, I'm well decorated. I mean, I've got a lot of papers that I could bust out right now, and I should have them behind me, but people couldn't see it anyways. But
would fill the wall behind you.
Well, our guest today. So this is. I mean, we try to bring people in that have won a lot of awards, and we have Andrew Laffoon with us this morning. So Andrew is the founder of Mixbook. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Founder, CEO. And I have a co-founder as well.
Well, that person's not here, so let's take all the credit. That's what we do here on More Than Profit. So poor person's not even here. So let's talk about did you ever win any awards in high school?
I was mostly homeschooled. So yeah, I got all the awards.
Okay. This is going horribly wrong right now.
Well, but you went from homeschool to UC Berkeley. I mean, that's a pretty prestigious path. So, I mean, that's an award in and of itself.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, it always helps when your mom probably got you in there. So again, that's not an award on that one either. But so I am curious. So what's an award you've won for your business?
Ooh. Well, of late, we've won the number one best culture for startups from Built In, and number one rated photo book from New York Times and many others. And there was plenty in the earlier times too. Inc. 30 Under 30, America's Most Promising Companies, this type of thing.
Wow. And so that's actually, so you go from zero to hero like that. That's pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, it was an overnight success. We just started the company and 3 days later we were winning awards, just, the way it should be.
For real, 3 days later, you really were.
3 days, 17 years, give or take.
Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense. So get us back on track here, Bryce. So we have Andrew. Give a little introduction of who Andrew is.
Well, I mean, he's already said it. He's the founder and CEO of Mixbook, which actually it was going to be one of my questions because it's actually quite unusual. You literally graduated from UC Berkeley, probably, I don't know, maybe a year in between, but then started Mixbook, and you've been there for 17 years.
That's right.
One, that's unheard of anywhere, but specifically in tech. Like the fact that you founded a company and you've been there now for the last 17. What's that experience been like for you? I mean, obviously, I would imagine when you came out of UC Berkeley, Silicon Valley was booming with technology startups and just this idea of build fast and sell. So I'm sure like when you first started, that was probably your mindset. Like, hey, we're gonna kill this thing. We're gonna do it for a couple of years. And here we are 17 years later. So what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, that was definitely the mindset in Silicon Valley. If you're going for a long time, either you have IPO'd and had become super famous, or you're a zombie company. You're kind of the Walking Dead. And there were some years where it felt like that. But when we started the company, we had this dream. We had a big idea, which was to democratize storytelling and to democratize creativity. And that was really exciting. But even so, we thought we're going to start the company, we're going to raise money, and we're going to sell it in 3 to 5 years. And we're going to make a ton of mistakes. And then we'll start a new company and we'll do better. Turns out, instead of doing that, I just continued to fix mistakes at the current company.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
But I think one of the things that's really interesting is in that journey, obviously you had this mindset from the early kind of influence of Silicon Valley and just kind of technology in general. But how have your desires for your own life and your desires for Mixbook changed in that time period?
Dramatically. 22-year-old Andrew was a lot more focused on, I always wanted to make an impact. That comes from my background. My dad's a pastor, his dad's a pastor, and I always thought the job of a leader is to impact people in a positive way. But when I got into entrepreneurship, it's very easy. I'm an engineer, so I was enamored with the technology. I was enamored with the idea of making a global scale impact. And when we started getting all these awards, you mentioned awards, and I kind of like have to shake off the nervousness because when we got all those awards the first time, Inc. 30 Under 30 and Forbes, America's Most Promising Companies, it got to my head. I actually took it to my ego. And I felt like I'm something now because of these awards. Of course, as it turns out, the awards don't actually add anything to you. But I did let them add something to me, and it was not good. And I realized, okay, my desire for pride and identity and security coming from my work is so destructive. We made a lot of bad decisions. I hired a lot of the wrong people, had to do a big layoff. We had these crazy expectations, way too big, made a lot of bad mistakes, and luckily grew through it. But it took about 3, 4, 5 years in a wilderness to actually learn those hard lessons and accept some humility.
Yeah. So how does that affect, like, how did that manifest? Like, so if that really, so you said I took it to my ego. So you get those awards. How are you, like, how does it manifest? Like, is it the way you act at home, the way you're treating employees, the way you just look at yourself in the mirror? How did that happen?
It wasn't that I treated people disrespectfully. That's just not me. It was more of trying to surround myself with people who looked good in a sense of looking at the resume, like, oh, look at this person. They were the CMO of this company. They were the CTO of that company. That's a person I need to have. And we're going to get press about it. And we're going to get more famous about it. And I'm going to attract even more great people. And being surrounded by the great people makes me feel like I'm great. And then the second, actually, for me, what's weird about this is the more you get those awards, but then things are not all going the way you think. Pride and insecurity are weirdly related. We have pride on the outside, but inside it's an insecurity. And so for me, that manifested to not actually being a very effective leader, to be honest. I brought in all this great talent who was actually playing a lot of politics and empire building and making a mess of things, as happens in high growth startups, right? You're growing 300% a year. There's a lot of opportunity for that. So I made just a lot of bad decisions. I didn't hire intentionally on culture. We didn't have a mission. We didn't have values. Lots of just poor decisions.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you make the change? Like, were you repented, if you will, and said, okay, enough of the ego. I need to build a better company. How long ago was that? Or was that just a gradual, like did you have an awakening one day where you're like, I've seen the light, this is wrong?
Yep. Like most things, it's gradually, then suddenly. So there was lots of different moments. I started getting connected with other entrepreneurs who I think were much more soulful in their approach. And I learned how to deepen my approach and how to integrate my faith and my sense of purpose into what I do. Really, though, it all came to a fore in 2018. And we had some pretty big disappointments in the business. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm 12 years into this company. Am I doing this with my life now? And I had already had the realization of we're not growing that fast. We're not that sexy of a company anymore. We're not winning any more awards here. Like, what am I doing with my life? Is this my life purpose? Like, why am I doing this? To make money? Who cares? There's tons of ways to make money. I have money. And I realized, okay, if I'm not doing this for a deep, soulful reason, I need to just sell the company and move on. And I ended up going on a retreat and really trying to figure out, is this what I'm called to do? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And that's when I really realized I've got to build based on culture. I've got to build based on mission. I've got to build based on the right reasons. And they might not lead to a huge exit. That might not lead to making tons of money. It might not lead to being famous. Who cares? But if I do the right thing for the right reasons to make an impact on people, I'm going to be satisfied. And I'm going to attract the right employee base who actually wants to do that. And we're going to build a company that can last for generations and make an impact. So that's really changed it.
I read an article about you. UC Berkeley did of alumni. And one of the things it talked about was one of your values is surrounding yourself with great people, which seems like, and that was actually a recent article, but you actually just articulated that was one of the things that led you to this idea of integrating all of these accolades more closely to your identity or ego. So it seems like that thread has always been there. Surround yourself with great people, but maybe your definition of what defines great has changed. Is that true? What is it now that you're looking for in people as you're hiring and building your company?
Character first. So back then, we always had an idea of values. There was always some basic beliefs that we could agree on. But we didn't document it. We didn't really interview very well for it. And we definitely didn't make decisions based on it on a daily basis. And back then it was just like, give me the smartest people. I want the smartest people. Like, a little ego is okay. I don't want a-holes, but I want the smartest people, the most talented people. And I still want really smart people and really talented people. And I want people smarter than me. But I also want people who care deeply about others. I also want people who are scrappy and entrepreneurial and get things done and creative. I want people who are craftspeople, who have a spirit of excellence in everything that they do, who are going to take it way further than any other normal person in a normal company would ever do, because they care so deeply. So we look very intentionally on values, and I look really intentionally on the mission. Our mission to empower people to be creative and connect people deeply with the ones they love actually has a lot of layers to it. And I'm looking for people who actually really believe that loneliness is one of the great dangers and evils of our world and want to fight it, who believe that every person is born to be creative and we have something we can add. I'm looking for believers, in a sense, and in a vision, in a mission, in a purpose, because that makes a complete difference. The third thing, which will sound maybe obvious, I don't know, is team players. I've realized that a great team, the whole is worth so much more than the sum of the parts. So I need people who can work really well with others and want to and love doing that. Highly collaborative, highly team driven, want to build for the collective result, not their own. No politics, no turf battles. I cannot abide that stuff.
So that sounds like a perfect person. Does that person exist?
Well, none of them are perfect, but yes. You're right. It does sound pretty good, doesn't it? That's the company.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, in what you said,
there you go.
Yeah, that's great. We have over 1 million listeners, so I'm sure you're probably going to get thousands of applications. You're welcome. And we don't charge for that. So with that, though, that really sounds simple, but it's a lot harder to do than, because again, I can sit down with any entrepreneur. Bryce and I talk to entrepreneurs all day long, and they say all this, like the rhetoric is all there, but it's in practice because, again, I think egos at play. People really are like again, 17 years, that's, you're in the salt mine still, but like, people want to build their business to sell it. So anyway, I just go.
I think what to carry on that a little bit, you made the decision to make the hard changes. I think what people miss is like, the mission stuff, the vision stuff, that sounds great. Hire for people, character. To what Brian's saying, like people say those words a lot, but you were building this company, you were 12 years in, and you turned around and you said, okay, what am I building this towards? Most people, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, they get to that point and they're just tired and they're like, well, I'll just build the next one the way that I think I should. And they just make the decision it's easier. The easier path is just cut your ties and move on. But you didn't. So I have to imagine, like, could you talk, like, what was that like for you to come back with a renewed sense of passion for this work that you had started, to have the guts, in a sense, to stick in and change that culture? And on the backside, that's where I think this award, it means probably more than the others, because it's more of a we did it, and we haven't arrived in a sense, but we at least, it was worth the struggle. What was that struggle like for you?
Well, there's lots of layers to that question.
And if you could also expand, like, what was the struggle like for you, and why should any of our listeners that are faced with that struggle step into that?
Yeah.
Before you answer it, because I've had it pointed out before about with your company, that you actually, like, you're on an aircraft carrier, and instead of building a new aircraft carrier you changed like all of it while you're still at sea, which, because how many employees did you have at 12 years?
We only had maybe, 60, 70 at that time. But
that's still a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a lot of lives.
So anyway, yeah. So anyway, so because when someone explained it that way, I thought, wow, that's a lot to think about, of going, that's why people build new ships. They don't refit their old one. But so 12 years in, so give us some of that.
Yeah. So I think the job of a leader always starts with the soul work, in my view. When you show up as a leader, your question each day, you're trying to inject energy and passion and vision in every conversation. You're trying to show people a future that they want to go to, but at the same time, you're listening and understanding and trying to figure out, why are we rooted in the past? Why are we getting stuck? And that requires a lot of soul work, as I would say. So it started with that. 2018, we had some real hard disappointments, and I actually went to this like redwood retreat, I think I mentioned, and was journaling. And the mantra that I got back was, what I need to do is simple: love our customers, love our employees, love our community. It's all about love. And if I do that every day, we're going to get somewhere. And then I need to build on culture, but I have no idea how to do it. And I realized I'm stuck. The company's stuck because I'm stuck. I've not been growing as a leader. I've been rooted in an old identity as a serial entrepreneur, and I need to embrace identity as a leader building an enduring company with a healthy culture. So I just went and found every mentor I could find, every book I could find, because I realized I need help. And I actually would say all great change starts with that realization.
And having the humility, the teachability, which I think is a quality oftentimes it's missing in a lot of entrepreneurs, which is one thing I look for is like, are they teachable? I want them smart, I want them confident, but are they also teachable? And that's I think a distinction that I think sets you apart.
Yeah. So then it sounds like, so you just put values and mission, and that's what people think. And no, it's actually there's a lot of nuance to it. The reason we didn't have values, we tried to put values at the beginning, and I remember reading about Enron, and they had great values. And you look at the outcome, and I was terrified of this. You've got the values on the wall, and the actual reality is either they're ignored, best case, or they're laughed at, and you do the opposite. And that terrified me, because I thought, if we do that, that's the worst of all worlds. So might as well have no values on the wall, because at least then it won't be a laughing stock, and it won't be something we just ignore, which is also stupid, but there you go. So when we actually came up
But real.
So I think, 2018 was that realization. 2019 is when I actually found a lot of the answers. That's when we've got the right people in place. We hired the Table Group, Pat Lencioni's consulting group, a great now friend of mine, Chris Jensen, who's really helped us, actually continues to help us, and put in place mission, put in place values. And a lot of times people talk about, if a new CEO comes into such and such company, they're going to change the values and the mission. It's going to be so terrible. And I'm like, It's not so easy. If you're going to change the values and the mission, expect to trade out at least 50% of the company, the people. Because a culture is people, that's all it is. And when you change the values and the mission, then the work becomes change the people, and people are really hard to change.
You ran into that.
Oh yeah, almost my whole top 2 levels of leadership swapped out. I mean, most of the company transitioned.
Wow.
And it was over a period of time, right? Like many people will opt out. Like, okay, that's where we're going. I don't want to go. And if that's not happening, you're not communicating it strongly enough.
Today's financial institutions operate on a massive scale, and what used to be peer-to-peer practice, i.e. community lending, has developed into a large, centralized system designed to facilitate the exchange of value. Our modern and now global financial marketplace has evolved from simple to complex, with more and more opportunities for using capital popping up every day. At Access Ventures, we envision a world where small business owners can access the capital they need to improve on their early traction, and where entrepreneurs can secure capital that works for their business by leveraging equitable collateral that can be acquired regardless of class, race, and/or gender. Over a period of 8 years, from 2014 to 2022, we have modeled and tested our growth loan fund, and over that time period, we loaned over $1 million and activated and empowered a community of volunteers to serve as a loan committee and to support their fellow community members by saying yes instead of no when they needed capital. This playbook is an open source culmination of the steps we took and the lessons we learned in building a community-first, character-based lending process. To learn more and begin your journey to character-based lending, you can download the playbook from the show notes. And now back to the episode.
I have to imagine when you're working at this point with some consultants helping you think through, they're being radically honest with you and saying, hey, this is what it's going to take. One, why did you press forward after being 12 years into this thing, the struggle of being an entrepreneur? I mean, that's a real struggle in and of itself. Why did you have this burning desire to make that change? And then how can some of our listeners who might be in that situation themselves, why should they press forward? I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is like, more often than not, I just see people, like Brian said, building other ships.
Yep. An author who's really inspiring to me is Simon Sinek. And he talks about the golden circle. And people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think for us in life, we've only got one life to live. And you can just follow whatever the opportunities are. But at some point, you're going to have a wake-up moment where you're going to realize, okay, I'm X% through my life now. And I haven't actually been owning this thing. I need to be choosing what I'm doing for a reason. And if I'm not, I better go figure out what is the thing I'm supposed to be doing that I want to be doing with my life. And that was my choice point, 2018. Once I made that choice, I had a 10-year commitment in mind. For 10 years, I'm going to go and build this thing. For me, 10 years is my version of forever. So who knows? It's not actually, there's no intentionality around like in 10 years exactly, I'm going to stop it. That's not the point. It's more of, I'm committed to this thing. Now what? And what am I committed to? What is the impact Mixbook needs to make? What is the impact I need to make on our customers, on our culture, and on our employees? And I realized too, culture is a powerful thing. I know maybe I'm going off script from what you're thinking. Culture is a powerful thing. A bad culture, if you think about Enron, were they just like all evil people? These all just like a company full of devils? No, they're normal people like you and me. But a bad culture brings out the worst in people. And bad cultures will make people worse at work and at home. Bad cultures will leave a trail of destroyed lives behind them. Great cultures can take mediocre people and make them great. I truly believe this. A great team is worth more than the sum of the parts. And that suddenly made me realize the job of a leader is so important. There's nothing more important for me to do than find people who are actually excited about the things I'm excited about and help them become the best versions of themselves along the way. That sounds amazing. I want to do that. It starts though with having that passion, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to make it through that next 10-year commitment.
I've never been to a Tony Robbins before, but I feel like I'm sitting with Tony Robbins right now, because I just go, everything you're saying is so simple, but then so hard to execute on. I mean, because it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of, I don't know, it's just way more than it. I mean, because all of it you're just saying, you're like, yes. I mean, Bryce and I, anyone we talk to, they would say this of their company.
Well, and I think that's where it requires the internal fortitude, the desire and the passion, the need to do. Like, I have to do this. it seems like you really got to that place of like, I have to do this. I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be tough, but it became a sense of urgency and a passion, which I think leads to my next question, because, knowing your background, knowing your upbringing, son of a pastor, grandfather was a pastor as well. What was it about your life? I mean, in two instances. One, what inspired you at an early age to kind of pursue what you did pursue? And then number two, it does seem, and correct me if I'm wrong, it does seem like at some point there was a bifurcation of who you were at work and who you were in home, and in those, meaning like what I'm hearing right now is an articulation of integration, where you're integrating who you are and what you're about into what you're doing in the world. Whereas before, when you first started Mixbook, it seems like those were somewhat divorced. It seems like your impact and who you were as Andrew Laffoon was maybe outside of Mixbook, and Mixbook was the thing that you did and you were going to move forward and sell it. So I'm just curious if you ever recognized that about yourself, and was that more of a cultural dynamic because you were in Silicon Valley and that's kind of what you did with tech, and tech wasn't about impact, it's about making money and on to the next thing. So I'm really curious, like in those two instances, like what inspired you as you were growing up? What really gave you this passion just for the world in general? And then also, did you recognize that about yourself?
So growing up, I was a weird kid. I grew up in North Carolina, small town, tobacco farming town. And I was the kid, and most of my friends were out playing sports and doing the things you do in that area. And I was at home taking apart every bit of electronics in the house and trying to figure out how it worked and modifying it and putting it back together. It rarely ever worked again. So that my parents eventually got me a computer and said, here, why don't you take this apart and build this? And that, of course, was the beginning of a lot of fun things. I was always into technology and engineering and coding and tinkering and all of that. So I was a weird kid in that. And my dad pretty quickly identified, okay, you're not going down this like pastor route. You're going to be doing something different with your life. And at age 12,
he was okay with that.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He just recognized I was different. And so he actually connected me with this entrepreneur. When I was 12, I went and hung out with a bunch of people at Duke University. Wow. And one of them taught me how to code, showed me the internet for the first time. This is 1994. And right at the beginning. And then gave me a series of books on tape from an Australian entrepreneur. And the book on tape series is basically like, if you're good at technology and business, then you're called to go and make an impact on the world, because there's no better way to make an impact on the world than through building corporations. It caught me completely. I'm like, that is me. That is my calling. That is my life. That's what I'm going to do. So I ended up starting my first company in high school for that reason. Now, granted, that was a totally different thing. That was just designing websites for other local companies and that type of thing. It wasn't building some kind of venture scale. I didn't even know about VCs back then.
How old were you, though? How old were you?
I was 14.
Wow.
Okay.
For that one.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. Yeah.
As far as separation of personal and work, I never intentionally did that. I just didn't know how to integrate my faith and personal beliefs into my work. I didn't really know what that looked like. I just thought about that as being ethical, doing the right thing, treating people well. My worldview is that all people are worthy of respect and love. So, okay, that's going to change how I affect things. That does change how I hire people. I really believed in the value of being intelligent. Like, I had a lot of beliefs, but they were just, 22-year-old Andrew. And as I matured and as I grew and as I got exposed to more other entrepreneurs who were actually integrating their personal beliefs and their faith and that into their work and into their companies and how they build, I realized, how much more is possible and how much more fulfilling would it look like if my work was just an outflow of who I am, as opposed to being this separate thing. So yeah, I think it was a maturing process.
What year did we meet?
2014. So, and by the way, that was a huge turning point for me, because before that, I really didn't understand the idea of work as human flourishing and as human flourishing for everyone you touch. It's for the employees, it's for the communities, it's for the customers, all three. And that idea of work is good. It's good.
Yeah.
And you can do it in good or bad ways, but it's fundamentally what we're made for. And the idea of you can actually create a culture, the culture itself of the company can make a positive impact on the world, even without all the other pieces. the product and the profits and all that. When you add it across every lens, trying to actually make good occur, the impact scales crazy. And it's unlike a nonprofit. Sorry, now I'm preaching to the choir here. Unlike a nonprofit where you're always having to raise money to build things, the company is making money, and as a byproduct, good comes out. It's a machine that produces good. That's crazy to think about.
That's so great.
That's awesome.
So this is because what I was going to say is, I remember you having the same, when I first met you, I remember you having the same zeal just for life and passion for your company. And that's why I was trying to think through what year did we meet, and then how quickly after that did because I think there's always a spark of just good in you. Like, you really did care about people. It wasn't like you didn't, you just evidently cared more about yourself than your employees or something. Because I still laugh going, you're still Andrew, because you're just that guy you're full of zeal. So yeah, that is incredible. And what, like how many children do you have?
3 kids.
And what's their ages?
13, 9, and 7.
And do you have any that are like you? I mean, are any of them taking things apart, putting things together?
I would say...
Ooh, that's a no. No, it's okay to say no. You got all football players. You got all sports people.
The sports is no. I would say they're all like me to different degrees. And none of them are me, but you don't really expect that, right? That's not what a right expectation on your kids.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say I think I've got probably a super creative, a scientist, and engineer. Those are probably the 3, although all of them have so many different things they could do.
Right.
So you're talking to a young entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, a young Andrew Laffoon, and you're like, what would you tell them about the path of entrepreneurship? Because it's sometimes we're on the other side. Business is good, culture is good, kids are good, all those things. But I remember the early days where you didn't even get a paycheck, and here you are, 17 years in. You thought you were building. Like, what would you tell? Like, what would be some words of wisdom for an aspiring young entrepreneur? Why should they still pursue that path?
Well, there's a bunch of layers here. So one thing is entrepreneurship is worth it, because I view that if you are a person who wants to make a positive impact in the world, your best shot is through creating something. Now, you don't have to do that in a startup, but a startup tends to be the place where ideas can really flourish. Now, it's hard. It's much harder than doing it from a big company. But a big company, your idea or your passion, most likely you're never going to see it happen, because it'll get killed through politics. There's so many reasons. There are plenty of examples where it can happen. But I think if you've got a passion and a vision of something to build and change in the world, you may be called to be an entrepreneur. And the key thing you need is persistence. You need that grit and tenacity to see it through. The second key thing you need is people around you who are going to cheer that vision on. And when you're having a tough time, and you'll have a lot of tough times, you need to be calling them, because you can't do it alone. No way. Not possible. Or if it is, it'll destroy you, and it will not be fun. Those would be like the top 2 things. I don't know. There's probably a third, but.
Well, and on the other side of that, like as the leader of a company, and especially for the last 17 years, how have you been able to stay as healthy as you are? Mentally, emotionally. What are some of the practices the rhythms that you have that have helped you stay grounded and focused and still passionate for the work that you're doing?
There's a lot of things. One of the things I think about is habits are compound interest. Good habits will change you, but it doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in a month. So habits is one piece, and I'll talk about that in a second. The key actually is probably a combination of habits and mentors. So habits for me, I've got this weekly habit where I sit in a coffee shop every Monday morning for 2 hours and just journal around what's going on in my life. What am I grateful for? What am I worried about? What would I do if I wasn't afraid? I have a set of about 10 or so questions that I go through every week, and just sit there with my journal and pray and write and think and dream. And the output of that is, what do I need to focus on this week? But there's also a lot of other outputs. What are the big observations and insights? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about my wife? What did I learn about my team? What do I need to do with these insights and observations? And those are the things, those little small actions have massively changed my life. Mentors, number 2. I currently have 2 coaches, on and off a therapist as
2
well.
coaches.
Yep. And I'm also part of 2 different CEOs groups. Just like the advantage you have with having peers and mentors is completely unfair versus someone who's alone. They have no chance. No way. No way. And
2 coaches.
2 coaches. Yep.
At the same time. So you run them simultaneously. So they both coach you at the same time.
Not at the same like actual time, but yes.
No. But yeah.
Yep.
And do they have a different? So I want to press there a little bit. Do they have a different goal with you? Like if one coach focuses on this, another coach focuses, or are they pretty similar and you're just looking for additional insight, or what does that look like?
They're different, quite different.
Okay.
One is more like my leadership culture coach from Table Group, and he's my coach, but he's doing a lot of other things within the Mixbook context. And the other is more like my personal growth coach.
Awesome.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's good to hear. And I'd be curious real quick before we move on. If you'd be willing, I'd love to help because our listeners, sometimes people don't know what to ask themselves. So if you really have these like 10 questions or so, and you'd be willing to share them, I'd love to put them in our show notes so people could also incorporate that into their lives as well.
The other thing, Bryce, that struck me going, so, we get thousands of letters every week from listeners. It's just crazy. But I was going to say the thing that's interesting is I think parents are always trying to think about their children. And to me, it's that great when you think about what your dad did by sending you to Duke at that age, because it's that thing going, we're always going to be the primary caregivers, primary leaders, teachers, all that stuff to our children. But going, think about for us going, how do we find these other mentors in a sense going, think of the inspiration that you received. And really, you are where you are today because of that guy who gave you that series by showing you how to code and, all that stuff. I'm just like, that's the kind of stuff as parents we're like, that is gold right there.
Mm-hmm. That is gold.
100%. Yeah. And I'm still in touch with my friend Don, because he was that key turning point in my life.
Oh, that's awesome.
Have you, what was that person's name?
Don Shin.
Don. I hope Don doesn't listen, but you probably should give a little bit of money to that guy or maybe some ownership in the company. That's just me. I mean, it's a little bit like Nike.
A little advisor share or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So, Andrew, we could talk. I mean, this has been inspirational to me, and just thankful that, we're friends and we get to see each other when we do. But I'm curious, 17 years in, I'm sure the vision for your company has changed. I'm just curious as we kind of wrap things up. What are you building towards now? Like what is the thing that drives you forward, that gets you the most jazzed about Mixbook for the future?
Yep. Rewind 5 years. My thought was 10-year vision. First, we need to build on culture. Then we need to build for the future. I think I may have mentioned I'm a technology guy. And in the pursuit of leadership, I thought, I don't know if I'll get back to the cool technology. It'd be great if I did. But the key thing is the impact on people. And luckily, we're getting back to the technology too. So we ultimately, Mixbook, today we produce photo book companies, right? We're the number 1 rated company in photo books. What the company really started in, and the root of the company, was actually the idea of storytelling, and storytelling that brings people together. And it turns out photo books are one way of telling stories, but they're not at all the only way. The problem we have is we take a lot of photos. They're all stuck on our phone. The problem we have is that storytelling is freaking hard, takes way too much work, and the average person is not very good at it. And the problem we have is that people are lonely and disconnected. You might use your photos to connect. Photos are a great way to connect because they remind you and connect you to the people that you love. But on social media, it's kind of just likes and comments and 15 seconds of fame. So for us, we have this vision of building something much bigger, the future of how people tell stories with their photos and using that to connect both physically and digitally. And the technology that recently has been coming out is going to enable that to be completely different and far faster than we thought. Generative AI.
That's awesome.
We already use AI heavily in the business, right? Trawling through your photos to figure out which are the best photos, figuring out which are the people that you care the most about, figuring out occasions, helping you find trips, all that stuff. But with generative AI now, we can do so much more to make storytelling easy. And I don't want to give too much more away from it than that, but
that's exciting. That's really exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So things I wrote out about you is I just go, you have an incredible heart, and just the way that you see the world. You have zeal and passion. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You have great zeal and passion. And you're also a person of action, where I just go, and I know that it comes in waves and go, stuff. Because I want to tell people, like, he is not perfect, far from perfect. But I've just seen you just over and over again, just genuine kindness towards people.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Profit. I know there were many amazing takeaways from Andrew. I hope you remember that habits are a compound interest and the importance of building a culture of love as you lead your team and company forward. And make sure you check out Mixbook.com. To stay up to date with More Than Profit, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. Don't forget to check out our new website at morethanprofit.fm, where we have additional content and past episodes, and we'll be posting some exciting news about upcoming live More Than Profit events. You can also learn more about what's ahead by following us on Twitter at listen_MTP. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures and is hosted by Bryce Butler and Brian McKay. Our executive producer is Crystal Escobar, and our associate producer is Bryn McKay. Audio production assistance is provided by Resonate Recording. Our theme song today was No Man's Land by Slapstorm. I'm Bryn McKay, and you've been listening to More Than Profit.